Here's a flip through of my latest junk journal. This one I did a little different than the ones I've been doing recently. The covers are from an old book, I think from about the 40s, and I took the guts out and I've been using them in other stuff. So I cut the spine out, trimmed the edges, and then I put together 5 kind of junky, scrappy signatures and bound them in with just a Coptic stitch. So I'll show you what I got in here. This has, I think, 120 pages, something like that. About 120 pages, and no 2 of them are the same. I was able to find, all different stuff to put in it, which I like. I like to do that. I like for every page to be new and surprising. It does have a little bit of sewing. It does not have any, ephemera and goodies tucked into it. But, it's got bunches of pages to work on. The signatures, the 5 signatures, are each made from, I think they were all some kind of junk mail. Oh, that's a magazine or a book page. But the rest of them were junk mail or, let me find one. Postcards, those big advertising postcards. That's a magazine page. So I like to use something kind of substantial for the outside part of the signature. I forget what that's called. And this is kind of it was a piece of junk mail. It's kind of cardstocky. There's book pages in here. Now there may be, 10 book pages, but they're all out of different books. So that kind of adds variety. Dictionary pages, envelopes, stuff that I find at thrift stores, notepads, foreign language books. I always have some just paper from around the house, from notepads, notebook paper, graph paper, those accounting ledger pads. There's always that kind of stuff because that's good to write on. And then I just folded it and sewed it so there's a couple little pockets there. And if a piece is too short, it's really small, then I will sew something else to it to make it longer so that it will get caught in at least 2 of the stitches on the spine. Because if it just gets caught by 1, it's going to pull out. And some of this stuff you may have seen in other videos that I've done. That's a page out of American Science and Surplus. And that's a 1940s ledger book that I got off eBay. A magazine. This was from a recent eBay purchase. And the next signature is a magazine page, Somerset Studio, I think. Another book page, and I always have lots of these. If you've noticed in my journals, there's lots of pharmacy bags. Yeah, don't judge me. Maps, I always like maps. More pockets. This is one of my favorite bindings to do because the book lays completely flat. I like that. Next signature, another magazine page. I think that was Anthropology, maybe. Stationery. So that was to make it bigger so I'd make sure and catch it in 2 of the stitches. Junk mail. Sometimes I'll put a sticker or label or something over our name and address, you know, if it's printed on a postcard or junk mail or whatever. That really doesn't concern me too bad, because whoever I send it to is going to have our name and address, so, you know, it's not really a big deal. Not all book pages I use are out of old books. Some are fairly new. Sometimes old book pages don't work well at all because they tend to get really brittle and they're almost crumbly. So they're kind of hard to use in something like this where the pages are folded. So new book pages are sometimes better. Oh, this signature, the outside part, is a greeting card that I got at a thrift store or somewhere. These, if you get those entertainment coupon books, you know, you pay for them, they're the little fat coupon books. Well, once they expire, it's full of all these colorful pages of coupons. So, you know, you've got that huge book full of goodies that you can stick in your books. Always have phone book pages because they're thin and have that crinkly sound that I like. That's a catalog. And then you recognize some of these from other videos. This was a... someone gave me a couple of these. They're big nautical maps is what they are. And I love those. They're great. I've almost used them up, but I will be sad when I do. Envelope. There's only a couple of pieces of scrapbook paper in here, and they're sewn on as extensions. There's, I don't know, maybe 3 small strips, and that's it. I'm really liking using just found papers and not scrapbook papers. And just in these books. I may do a book tomorrow that's nothing but scrapbook paper, you know, and that's fine. I like it. But for these books, I'm kind of challenging myself to not use scrapbook paper because that's, I mean, it's kind of easy to cut scrapbook paper and stick it in the book. You know, anyone can do that. But collecting different found papers is not quite so easy. It's a little more of a challenge. So that's why I'm trying to stick to just found papers for now. This was a foot page. And notepads, scrap papers. This is one of those crumbly book pages that just doesn't fold well. That's some packaging. A cologne sample thing from a magazine. And on this piece of packaging, I sewed on one of my glassine envelopes that I got the other day. Another little piece of scrapbook paper. And when, to keep your book from being too symmetrical and even, I have to remember to make myself fold some of my pages not in half, you know, but fold them where one side's longer than the other. See on this one, here's this side and then that side. Because, you know, I'm just naturally, you want to fold it in half. And I'm going to show you what I end up doing in a minute. I have to force myself to be asymmetrical. I am not naturally asymmetrical. I'm not random. I have to have intentional randomness and forced randomness, if that makes sense. That's the only kind that works for me. And there it is. I may put some kind of closure on this book. I may not. I don't know. I have an idea for the closure and I can't get it to work, so I'm just going to continue to mess with that for a little while, and if it doesn't work, I'll give up on it. But I will show you when I make one of these books, and if you want to make one for yourself, you know, you just start collecting these papers, and I keep them in bins in my art room, and when I get ready to make a book, I'll just go through each of my bins, and I'll pull one sheet off of every pad. I'll take one sheet off of every stack, and I'll take one map, one notebook paper, one ledger sheet, one of this notepad, one of that notepad, you know, one of each, so that everything's different and I've got a good variety. And I'll end up with a stack that looks kind of like this. And this is just, I'm getting ready to make another one of these same kinds of journals. So this is my stack that I start with. And this is where I've just gone through all my stuff and I've pulled out. Okay, sometimes I pull out two because I can't decide which one I want. But in the book, I will use only one. I've got one of just about everything that I have available to use. I've got maps, I've got phone book pages. These are from magazines and catalogs. I'll pull one of each. If I pull two from the same magazine, it's just because I'm not sure which one I want to use. And I don't really give much thought to color. Occasionally I will. It's just whatever I feel like, because I do like random. I try to be, you know, intentionally random. So my next book is going to have these. I've not cut these down yet or folded them. I just gather them up first, and then I will decide what size I want the book to be, which is usually based on the size of the cover. And then I'll decide if I want to fold it this way, if I want to fold it this way, if I want to cut it before I fold it. I try to do as little cutting as possible, because if they're too big, that's just a great opportunity for a pocket. But I do cut some of them because I don't want to have to sew a pocket on every single page. So I've just got an assortment of magazine pages, and some of them are out of magazines that are staple bound, so I've got a nice big 2-page spread, which could end up being the outside of a signature, or it may not, who knows. More maps, just one of each different kind of map. I have a big box of architectural blueprints, not really blueprints, what do you call them? Land plats and stuff. Yeah, that's what I have. And note papers. And these are kind of the larger notepads. These, you know, they're big enough to where they can be a sheet in a book. And I probably won't have to add anything to them to make them longer, you know, in order for the binding to catch well. So I'll take one of each. I may not end up using all these, but I like to have them to mess with. And then I go through my other pads of paper. I just take one of each. You can see. And these are my little notepads. These are not going to be pages in the book, but these are going to be things that I will sew onto the pages to make them longer or wider, or, you know, however they need to be. If I've got a funky shaped page, I need to make it a little longer, I'll use these smaller sheets to do that. These long skinny ones like this are especially good. So that's what those are. Book pages, I just ripped one out of probably at least a dozen books. Encyclopedias, dictionaries, fiction, nonfiction, biographies, books with pictures, sheet music books, art books, nature books, vintage stuff. Just whatever I've got and can find. pull a sheet, and I just, really it's very random. I don't give much thought to it. I just yank them out. And then the last thing I do is collect ephemera, not like, I'm not talking about tags and die cuts and scrapbook type ephemera. I'm talking about junk ephemera. You know, this is a book spine. Actually, it's the one that came off of here. Well, I don't know what I could do with that, but I could do something. And then, you know, there's junk mail, postcards, some paint chips, glassine and other types of envelopes. And, well, I just thought of this the other day. I mean, how great would that be? Just buying, you know, put the center right there, so you've got these little pockets. You could use that one. Yeah, oh look, another pharmacy bag. Huh. Packaging. And I have a couple of rolls of paper from Player Pianos that I got at an antique store. And they make fun, interesting pages. So, that's what I do. I rip off one of everything, gather it up. If I don't do it that way, if I just try to say, okay, here are 4 signatures. I'm going to lay out my 4 signature covers. Now let's start putting stuff in them. I'll show you what happens when I do that. This little disaster happens. Laid out these 4 kind of heavy, glossy junk mail postcards, and then started trying to just look through all of my paper stacks and put stuff in them. And what happens, and I don't know if you can tell, they're identical. I just, without even thinking or trying, I just automatically make them identical. You know, first we do this page, then we do this page, and then I'll have 4 different book pages, so I think I'm being all different, but I put them at the exact same spot in each signature. So this is a total fail, because even though, I mean, this is great and all, and each signature individually is great, but to get a book like this, I would not like this because it's just too contrived. You know, these junk journals like this should be more random. So this is kind of a fail. But all that means is I've already got pieces folded and cut to the right size to use in my next book. You know, it will not be bound like this. I'll just take these out and use them the way they should be used instead of this freaky little anal retentive thing that I naturally fall into. See, I did it again here. I had these pages that I wanted to use for signature covers. So I laid the 3 of them out, started filling them up. I filled them identical. And that's just too boring. It's too planned out. So I had 7 of these, and I've already taken the others apart and used them in other stuff. So that's what I'll do with these. So that's why I make the stack. Because when I make the stack, then I can go through my stack and figure out what to use for each signature cover, and then from my stack start filling the signatures. And since everything in my stack is different, then it kind of forces me to make each signature different. I can't fall into that, you know, do them all exactly the same pattern, which is my natural, instinctive way to do it. So see, you can outsmart yourself sometimes, I'm telling you. So that will result in this instead of this, which is a good thing. So there's your tip for the day. There's a way that you can trick yourself into being delightfully random and carefree, or into making people think that you are, when you're really very stiff, anal retentive, and obsessive compulsive. You know, because this is more fun, and this is who I want people to think I am, when actually this is more of really who I am. So now you know. Okay. That's all. The end.